Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. Now, even though we're nearing the end of the session, I think it's important we continue to focus on the priorities Vermonters expect us to deliver on before the legislature adjourns. I know you've heard these numbers before, but they're important because they tell a story. 14, 28, and 48. In the last 10 years, there are 14,000 fewer kids in our schools, 28,000 fewer age 40 to 54, the prime working age, and 48,000 more Vermonters over the age of 65. This really tells us everything we need to know about what ails us. Vermonters are aging without the youth and the workforce we need to take their place. I firmly believe in order to reverse the demographic trends we're facing so that we keep and attract a younger population for our state, we must address our affordability challenges. And one way to do that is to ease the tax burden, because we know there are many folks who just can't make ends meet, and others who can't make the financial math work to move here. That's why we put together a tax relief package to help those here keep more of what they earn so they get ahead and stay ahead, and also help to attract future Vermonters as well. This includes things like the earned income tax credit, increasing the tax exemption on Social Security, eliminating the income tax on military pensions, and extending the child tax credit to age 6. All of these are policies I proposed to the legislature in January and included in my budget. This will put money back in the pockets of thousands of Vermonters, help us compete with other states to fill jobs employers are struggling to hire for, while also helping Vermonters who are already here stay here. Because when I'm out talking to people across the state, many don't want to leave, but feel they're left with no other option because the cost of living here in Vermont is crushing them. The House made some significant progress on the tax proposals I presented in January, and I'm hopeful the legislature will pass a bill I can sign so Vermonters with young families, retirees, and military veterans all have a little more breathing room so they can thrive in Vermont and survive as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Scholdice.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. I am Bill Scholdice, Commissioner of Tax. As the Governor, I think, pretty well has summarized kind of where things are at with regard to tax relief proposals making their way through the legislature. Let me just quickly recap that as a reminder. There are 4 proposals. One is the expansion of the Vermont Child Tax Credit, moving that from age 5 to age 6. The increase on the earned income tax credit for filers, moving that, guaranteeing them 100% of the federal earned income tax credit, up from the current 38%. Increasing the eligibility threshold for tax exemption on Social Security by $5,000. And a full tax exemption for U.S. military pensions and survivors. And I'll tell you a story at the end about a survivor. As the Governor said, we've heard many times about the need for affordability, and this proposal is directly tied to that. In addition, we've also been clear about housing, education transformation, and a fiscally responsible budget. These 4 proposals that I just referenced are targeted tax breaks, which we've been talking about, as we've indicated, for some time. We believe that these will help Vermonters keep their money in their pocket to be able to pay for things as they age and raise families here in Vermont. Again, young families are a target, lower income Vermonters, seniors surviving on a fixed income, and veterans in general. I wanted to thank the legislature and the House for everything they've done thus far to keep these proposals moving through the legislative process, especially the folks in Ways and Means, both Chairman Kornheiser and Representative Canfield, And the budget conferees as well, because they have also set aside the funding necessary to support these tax proposals when they get to the finish line. The present version of these of this legislation is, from what I'm most excited about, is received tripartisan support, and hopeful that when we get to the conference committee, any minor differences can be sorted out. The specifics include a new $250 refundable tax credit for veterans with incomes below $25,000. Two, a expanded Vermont child care tax credit for earned income tax credit. Expanding the eligibility of Social Security exemption, which the governor has proposed back in January. And a full military retirement and survivor benefit for those incomes below $125,000. We believe that expanding the military retiree is long overdue. I think 38 other states currently offer such a benefit. And it's key for the governor's proposal because it also incents military retirees to do so in Vermont. The average age of a veteran retiree is somewhere between the age of 35 and 55. They've come from good schooling, good background, good leadership skills, bringing them into Vermont to be able to join our workforce and provide those necessary skills to the next generation of Vermonters coming up into the workforce, I think would be a real good benefit to us as we begin to look to ways to grow our economy. We are encouraging the legislature to consider these impactful proposals, and we're looking forward to having this proposal put on the governor's desk for his signature. A lot of Vermonters will be looking forward to holding on to these few hard-earned dollars to be able to use as they see fit. A quick story. I was sitting in my office the other day, and a 90-year-old young woman called me, and she said, "Bill," I happen to know her, I won't give out her name or social security number, and she said, "Bill, are you serious that the governor's going to get these proposals through?" And I said, "Well, that's his intention." And she said, "Do you know that the Social Security exemption will give me a break? And I'm a survivor, my husband was a veteran. Do you know his passing and my survivor benefits will give me a break?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "You don't understand. This is the difference between me having one good meal a day or not. I think we owe it to Vermonters, survivors, veterans, young families to put these on the governor's desk so he can sign them into law." Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll open up to questions now.
Governor, is there any chance, or are you hearing any chance, like in the Senate, that these proposals might be watered down or might be changed in any way?
It's hard to know what's going on in the Senate. You're talking about the tax proposals. Just don't know at this point. I know that that's been a bit of a challenge getting through the Senate, especially with the military pensions. So we'll just have to wait and see.
The insurance and health premiums increase, and health insurance premiums would, for a lot of beneficiaries of the programs that you're talking about, far outweigh whatever benefits they would get from these tax breaks. With Blue Cross asking for a 20+% increase in rates, what, if anything, are you going to be doing to ensure that they don't face that kind of cost pressure on top of double-digit increases last year?
Yeah, obviously, along with property tax increases that we saw last year and we've seen over the last few years, with the workforce challenges we have, affordability in Vermont has been challenged all across the board, and healthcare is a major part of that as well. I had said that we need to focus on housing this year, knowing that we have other challenges that we have to address. So we're focused on that, but I have we're working with the Green Mountain Care Board. Their liaison, who we all know, Mike Smith, is the liaison between them and the UVM Health Network, I think is beneficial. And I look forward to some of the proposals they'll be working on. Now, this is not going to be easy. It's almost like having the whole discussion on education transformation because there's going to be consolidation in some areas. And I'm not saying shutting down any hospitals, but people have to rethink what they're doing. We can't be everything to all people in every single hospital in the state. We just don't. I've given you the numbers. We're not exactly growing in population here, and we're not growing in the right areas. We need a younger, healthier population to backfill what people are paying into the system. So it's going to take all of our efforts across the board to do this, but there's no single magic answer here. It's simple math. But having said that, I think we have to look at some of the bigger hospitals and find efficiencies of scale there in order to right this ship.
So you don't have anything in the offing that would insulate Vermonters against these proposed rate increases?
We'll work it through the Green Mountain Care Board. Again, we're working with them on some of their proposals. There is one measure that we signed or that is passed through the legislature that I think will help. So there are tools that they will need to help insulate Vermonters, but again, it's difficult just because of the demographic situation we're in, workforce crisis, housing crisis, education, transformation issues, the crisis we face there, property taxes, all across the board. So this is just compounding the problem.
Governor, can you speak about the impact on small businesses? I imagine a lot of them will be impacted by this. And maybe if Commissioner Scholz, I'm sorry, if the Commissioner can weigh in as well, given your history with a major employer in Vermont.
Yeah, well, any of us who have been in business before know that payroll is a big proportion of what we have to pay out as employers. But healthcare is right up there as well, and providing those benefits is important to our employees as well as to overall health of our state. So this is again, these are going to be. We don't absorb costs in business. We pass them on to our customers, and so that's why I've always said to our friends in the legislature, every time you raise a tax or raise a fee or do anything to increase the costs of on businesses, it just gets passed on. I believe the same to be true with tariffs. That's a consumer tax as far as I'm concerned, because it gets passed on to somebody and we all pay it. So this is the same issue here. Anything you want to add to that?
I think the governor's summarized it well. Secretary Curley's on the line too. She can speak to this as well as being out there. But and I, as you noted, I've been CEO of a couple of companies in the state of Vermont, and it's like the number 2 line item of expenses on the P&L, and that's beyond salaries. It's healthcare costs, and the way they're headed is not sustainable, and we've got to find a way to bend that curve back. Because as the governor says, one of two things happens: you pass it on to consumers to the point that they can pay it, or businesses get smaller and jobs get lost. In either case, it's not acceptable.
Secretary Curley, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you've both covered it very well, but I would also just say that, when we're trying to recruit businesses into Vermont, it also becomes really difficult when states next to us have healthcare costs that are significantly less than us. So this is a really important affordability issue that we need to address.
Again, those numbers that I stated in the beginning, the 14, 28, and 48, they do tell that story. And if we have jobs available, we just need to fill them. So we need to make it, that's why we, again, focus on housing, because without housing, we're not going to attract anyone here. If we don't make it more affordable, people are going to make other decisions. So it all has to work together towards the common goal of making Vermont more viable and more affordable.
Why didn't it make the list of the top 4 things?
You can't treat every crisis the same. We can't handle all the crises at once. We have a separate board. We have the Green Mountain Care Board that is full-time working on this issue. there wasn't any other board working on the other crises that we face, the housing crisis. We don't have a board working on that, an independent body. We don't have a board that's working on education transformation. Maybe they should, but they aren't. So this is, we had to pick something in the first half of the biennium. And I said, if we can get those solved, at least get them moving so that we see transformation in the future. We see the benefits of some of the housing policies and so forth we're putting into place. If we see some movement there, then we have to move on to healthcare.
Governor, have you seen the letter sent to Burlington's mayor? But I believe there was over 100 businesses that signed this letter raising concerns about the quality of downtown, declining foot traffic, construction, a myriad of issues facing downtown Burlington. Have you seen the letter? What are your thoughts on it?
I saw it. I just breezed through it. I didn't read it word for word, but it's not a surprise from my standpoint. I hear from some of the businesses. Some of them are friends of mine, so I hear some of the complaints and some of the issues that they're facing. So again, we have to work on this. Burlington is important to the state, our largest city, and it is an attraction to many. So we're, again, in this together. I think the mayor will probably try and address this as well. The construction is difficult because it is disruptive. Every town and village, any road construction we do anywhere it impacts the community, impacts businesses. We see it in Winooski right now as well, but we saw it in Middlebury when we were putting the tunnel in there. We saw it in Barry when we were doing that project. Every single construction project has an impact on the community. After completion, hopefully will benefit the community as well.
In speaking with some of these businesses, they also call on state lawmakers and yourself to give them more support. A lot of them, I think, in talking with them, they feel forgotten. They feel like they're sort of being cast by the wayside. What more can be done from your perspective or from the legislature's perspective to try to get our arms around this problem that downtown Burlington is facing?
Yeah, I think it has to be handled from within. It's something the community obviously has an interest in. The business folks there have a tangible interest in. So I think they have to work it out themselves, and we'll assist in any way we can. But we can't provide grants, for instance, for those who are impacted by any construction. That would just that's just not practical from our standpoint, because every community would need that, and we just couldn't afford it.
One of the big asks from these businesses is having more law enforcement patrol on Church Street. I know the past few summers VSP has had a role in kind of maintaining Church Street. You wouldn't contact the city at all about that happening again this summer? Or you
They haven't reached out to us. I mean, that offer is always open, and we've complied and worked with them in any way we can. But I'm not aware that they've reached out.
With the education bill now in Senate Finance, they've been taking a little time to get up to speed. They're reaching some decision points. I guess what's your level of confidence at this point that the bill that committee passes will be something that could receive your signature? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting close every day. We have ups and downs every day. We're trying to work some of the issues through. I think there's a willingness on the part of the legislature and leadership to get this done. So I think that's important. We're still talking, and they're listening, and we're listening to them. So I still have great hopes that we'll get something through, get it out of the Senate, get it to a conference committee, and then work from there.
And is that relationship, as you described it, is that markedly different than last year? It seemed like...
Absolutely.
Can you, I guess, how so? How are the conversations different? Do they feel different?
They know they have to listen to us, to me, at this point in time, and they didn't have to the last 2 years. So that's different, and that has made the difference in some of our talks and negotiations.
When you presented your climate action plan to lawmakers in February, you said at the time you had no intention of moving away from advanced clean trucks and advanced clean cars too. What specifically has changed in the interim that led to the executive order you issued?
I think, again, just seeing what's happened to some of the manufacturers, that they are trying to comply, and it's not even. It's not across the entire country. Every state isn't impacted by this. Only those of us who are tied to the California standard there. So we find ourselves as an outlier, and so other states are able to, with the new administration, less coming in for incentives to buy these EVs. That's had an impact. But I just, I've experienced it over the last 3 years. We've had an electric vehicle, and we have a long ways to go to catch up. We need more charging. We need more fast charging. And there's even, you have level 1, level 2, level 3 charging devices spread throughout the state, but not enough of them. And there are even different classifications within level 3, the fastest charging. And we need more fast chargers in order to have attract people to EVs. And the cold climate doesn't help either. So again, everything coupled together, we wanted to make sure that we weren't impacting our economy, and I think we are.
So I'm sorry, which of those things that you just referenced is new information that you've gotten since February that led to this change?
Well, I think all of them, but it's certainly the lack of any participation from the federal government in terms of incentives. They were pretty good incentives. That didn't help. So that was fairly major. But also hearing from the manufacturers and what they're doing to the dealers, because they're forcing the dealers to take some of the EVs, and the dealers aren't able to sell them, and so and they're using them for leverage. You have to take the electric vehicles, the heavy-duty electric vehicles, and then you aren't able to receive some of the vehicles you need that are on order until you sell the EVs that are on the lot.
I'm talking to some lawmakers and climate advocates who said things like Governor Scott talks the talk, but has shown us time and again that he's not willing to engage in the hard work, or it's a failure of leadership on one of the most complicated and consequential issues of our time. How do you respond to those characterizations?
Well, I use common sense. I'm practical, and I think that we have to be practical here, and it's part of I think our DNA here in Vermont always used to be that we use common sense to address issues, and there's a time when we push, and there are times when we have to say we have to take a pause here, and we have to allow the technology to catch up. We have to allow for the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure to catch up, and it's just we aren't able to do that at this point in time.
Can you explain a little?
Can you explain a little more why we are unable to do that at this time? Vermont has always been cited as the place in the country with the highest per capita number of chargers in the nation. So there's a little bit of a disconnect for me.
Oh, we're a small state.
We're a small state, yeah. So we have this stat where they're like the most in the nation in terms of charging infrastructure.
Per capita.
And yet per capita, yet charging infrastructure is cited as the reason why we can't move forward with this.
But again, I will remind you, I don't know if you drive an EV or not, but okay. So when you go to a charging station, some of them are older. They're level 1. It would take 12 to 16 hours to fully charge your vehicle. And then you have a level 2 that you might be able to get done in 8 to 10 hours. Then you have the fastest charging, and that still takes hours, depending on the level within that level 3 category. So it's you have to plan ahead. You can't rely on that if you're going to be traveling in Vermont, especially on a cold winter day. Your range might be about 200 miles. So if you've got to go to Brattleboro and back, you're challenged. You have to plan.
An incident in the F-150 where you weren't able to get where you needed to go because of the charge?
Yeah, I mean, we've had to make other arrangements and, or wait, and that just sucks up a lot of time, and you can't plan ahead for that sometimes.
Do you have anything in your budget that would broaden the EV charging infrastructure in the state?
We're constantly trying to improve. Again, we're trying to continue with that. Secretary Flynn on, who wants to elaborate on that, because we've done a lot there, but at the same time, the federal government is not being real helpful with us at this point in time. So growing that infrastructure that we desperately need is not available, or not as available as it once was. Secretary Flynn, then I'm going to ask Secretary.
Thank you, Governor. Yes, to the question, there's a couple of things at play here. Vermont per cap does have, or recently at least, as of recently, did have the largest number, or the most number of EV charging facilities in the country. That's per cap to our population. The issues are really sort of twofold. The infrastructure that we built out so far, we built out using money from the VW settlement. And that money was not tied to Buy America requirements. Anything that's come to any of the states, including Vermont, through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is tied to Buy America requirements. Buy America requirements right now, while noble, and certainly not disagreeing with that philosophy, it's very difficult to find the componentry at this point to fulfill the Buy America requirement. Now, what we have built, for example, some of you in the media were in Bradford a year ago when we did install, we were one of the first states in the nation to take advantage of the National Electric Vehicle Initiative, NEVI program. That was a program put out by the prior administration. However, they waived for that program the Buy America clause. They put $5.5 billion toward EV infrastructure for the fast charging the governor is describing. In the ensuing year and a half or so, only 66 charging stations around the nation have been constructed. So currently, this administration has paused that program to reassess the entirety of that funding and is telling us that they will provide new guidance. But the point I'm really making is that build-out had a waiver for Buy America. The previous build-out that Vermont undertook was not constrained by Buy America. So there's some practical realities to implementing some of these programs. I think where we're able to move, we move well and effectively. But the governor said it right. There needs to be a predictable route for anyone who's traveling with an EV to know that getting there is not really a stressful situation. We'll get there. It's going to come, but you have to do it in measured steps.
Governor, Secretary Moore, you want to weigh in?
Thank you, Governor. Just a couple of things. One, Kevin, to respond to your question, H289, which was the administration's climate omnibus, did include funding for electric vehicle charging, recognizing there is additional revenue being generated through RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative right now, that could be redirected to these purposes. To the best of my knowledge, the legislature did not take up that proposal, and that money remains in the RGGI account. And then just big picture, I think it's important to note that the executive order is enforcement discretion and compliance flexibility. It's not walking us away from the Advanced Clean Truck or Clean Car rules. And so as a result, there are obligations that flow to manufacturers in order to access the flexibilities that are being provided by that executive order. Manufacturers need to provide an annual report to the agency about steps they are taking to continue to promote and incentivize the purchase of EVs, drive and ride events, supporting charging infrastructure, and there's several other components there. So to continue to make the progress the governor is speaking to. In addition, on the truck side, we are creating a reporting mechanism so that if Vermont consumers feel like they don't have access to heavy-duty vehicles, mostly municipalities in this instance, snowplows, school buses, all tuck up under that heavy-duty vehicle banner, that they can reach out to us and we can work to ensure that those vehicles aren't being held back inappropriately. And again, that obligation sits with manufacturers. The enforcement discretion is only available to them if they are continuing to provide the services that Vermonters are requesting.
So the enforcement, you're going to use your discretion about whether to use is largely for fining people for failing to meet the ratios, is that right?
Correct.
So the Bradford Select Board released some information on the use of that charging station that the Secretary was just referencing. And there have been only, for each month of 2025, there have been only 47 sessions, 47 charging sessions at that station, which simple math is about 1.5 a day, if I understand that data correctly. And I'm just wondering why that is. It seems to me that 1.5 charging sessions per day is a pretty low number for such an expensive facility.
I don't have the answer to that. A lot of it probably depends on tourism as well. As you know, we're being impacted by some of the tariff discussions in terms of having our friends to the north come down to visit. They tend to, a lot of them, drive electric vehicles as well. So that could be part of the impact. It's on the eastern side of the state. Maybe there would be more traffic coming up from, let's say, Boston. We find a lot of EVs coming up from there, the Boston area. If you go to up in the Berlin, you might notice on some days where the parking lot is absolutely packed and a line waiting to get into those. So there is demand. We just need to be able to put the chargers where they suit us best and satisfy the public.
Ways and Means, I believe, had a vote on a version of the TIF program that you proposed for housing infrastructure for smaller municipalities. I'm wondering if you're familiar with the construct that they are moving forward with and what you think of it.
Yeah, if it's anything like it was yesterday, then it's just much too complicated for anyone to understand and will not be utilized by small communities. So it's taking a step backwards. What had gone through the committees in the Senate and the House, was acceptable. And then when it got to the Ways and Means, they changed it so much that I don't think it's viable at this point. But we have a ways to go. It's still got to get to the floor, and we'll see where it goes from there.
And is there a specific aspect of it that you find especially problematic?
I just think they're just trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to give some relief and keep something simple so that small communities can take advantage of it to grow their housing stock, to grow their economy. And it seems as though they're just making it so complicated that no one will be able to utilize it.
All right, we'll switch over to the phones now. Keith Whitcomb, Rutland Herald.
Hi, Mr. Governor. There's a gentleman in Rutland City who has circulated to just about every town in the state a request to adopt a resolution affirming people's right to due process and their constitutional rights. It's pretty similar to the Declaration of Inclusion that was going around, but he was telling me he's going to keep doing this in the hopes that the state might adopt something similar. I was just curious if you had heard about this or had any time to consider that, or what your thoughts might be.
I have not heard of it, but obviously I believe in due process. I think it is part of our Constitution, and that everyone has a path forward to utilizing due process. So I don't know if a resolution would help anything. If you believe there's a constitutional basis for due process, I don't think a resolution is necessary. But I don't know. We'll have to see what it says.
Thank you.
Back to the room.
Speaking of due process, you met with Mos Madavi last week. Want to know just what you thought of him. Are you satisfied that he's receiving due process? And as far as you know, does he have a federal immigration hearing?
I don't know I'll take the last one first. I don't know what the process is from this point forward. As you might recall, I had said, if they have evidence that he is a threat to the United States or a state and to the country, then he should be deported. But if we're just mad at him for what he's saying and promoting, that's free speech, and he should be released. Obviously, the judge felt that we were just mad at him, and there wasn't enough evidence to continue to detain him. As far as my conversation with him, it was brief. It lasted like 3 or 4 minutes. I met him here in this room. He just came in the door, and he thanked me for some of the statements I made. And I had mentioned to him that I may not be in lockstep with what his views on some of what he's been promoting, but I believe in his ability to do so and to utilize his First Amendment rights. So that's about where it ended. He seemed pleasant, and that was about it. There wasn't much more than that.
Is there any update you can share on your thinking regarding the state's contract with CBP and their use of the state's prisons?
I think it's still ongoing. I saw it in the weekly report from last week. DOC is still negotiating, so I don't have any updates. There was nothing in the weekly report that I remember that I could report on.
On that same front, there was a recent publicity about yet another researcher, Harvard researcher, I think, whose case is actually being heard here in Vermont today. She was transported through Vermont on her way to a holding facility in Louisiana where she remained. I wonder if there's any, we've talked about this before, and I guess you just answered the question, but it just looks like there's more evidence that Vermont is being used as a way station in some of these immigration enforcement actions in order to move people from where they're picked up to where they want to ultimately be detained. And do you have any concern at all about the state's collaboration with, cooperation with, and engagement in that system of moving detainees around the country?
Well, I know that, when this was brought up a few weeks ago with Mr. Madawi, there was a push for us to cease our contract with the federal government. And I'd said, I think that we treat people well. There's an advantage, I think, to being here in Vermont. We have, it seems as though, at least 2 federal judges who have common sense and adhere to their constitutional obligation. And so I didn't see the merits of doing so, much to, I think, the disappointment of some in the legislature. But one of the things Mr. Madawi did say was he was thankful that he was here in Vermont. And that's what he was thanking me for. So I think we have to live within our obligations, but I don't think it's, compared to other places, I don't think Vermont is a bad place to be at this point in our time.
Governor, yesterday I believe you signed the bill which would allocate funds from the opioid settlement money, or money from the opioid settlements. In that bill, there's also the money for the safe injection site in Burlington, which you had previously vetoed. Why sign this bill?
Well, there was a lot more to that bill. I mean, I did see the headline this morning in at least your station saying that the governor had funded the safe injection sites by signing the bill. That doesn't really tell the whole story, though. As you all probably recall, I vetoed that measure. But unfortunately, that wasn't sustained. The legislature overrode that. And this was just the money that was going through this settlement money, opioid settlement money, was flowing through. And there's other measures within there that I agree with. I still believe, safe injection sites are a bad idea. I think they're a dumb idea. When we have so many other areas that we should be putting money into, I would prefer more into prevention. But this is the opioid settlement committee that was formed to make their choices known. And again, I lost on that one, and so you have to move on. So that isn't, by signing the bill, isn't my acceptance of safe injection sites by a long shot.
So, Governor, the all-time veto governor, you've been pretty restrained this year. Do you expect any coming up? And I'm wondering, does having an effective veto somehow promote fewer vetoes because you're negotiating more?
Yeah, no, that is exactly the case from my standpoint. They have to come to the table now. Before, they didn't have to, and the only tool I had was to veto bills, and then they would have to override, which they could, and they did. So this year's different story. We've got a coalition of like-minded people in the House and the Senate that have worked with me to make sure that we have a voice at the table, a seat at the table, and we get to work through some of our disagreements, which we're doing right now. So we'll see. I mean, I think I've only vetoed one this year. Well, vetoing a bill isn't something I look forward to. I would rather come to agreement by negotiation. And so this year is an example of what can happen if we work together. Thank you all.